Democrats move another major step toward impeachment of the president. Will it hurt or help Donald Trump's bid for another term in office? On the campaign trail, a $20 trillion proposal to provide Medicare for all. Will it sink Elizabeth Warren's candidacy or propel her to the nomination? Here at home, early voters have cast their ballots in the contentious city election. How will low turnout impact Mayor Sylvester Turner's quest for re-election? I'm Greg Rugen, and welcome to Watch Your Point, where our panelists call it like they see it. Let's greet them. Starting us off, legendary reporter turned investigative media consultant Wayne Dolcefino. Next up, legal analyst and well-known Houston attorney Carmen Rowe. In the three spot, Charles Blaine, founder of the advocacy group Urban Reform. Batting cleanup, longtime Fox 26 legal and political analyst Chris Tritico. Next up, conservative lawyer and Second Amendment expert Michelle Maples. And closing us out on that hot corner, writer, educator, and radio host Antonio Diaz. Let's begin. History made this week as the United States House of Representatives took another major step toward impeachment of President Donald J. Trump. Along purely partisan lines with only two Democratic defections, the House Majority Party established guidelines ahead of a very likely vote on articles of impeachment.
I don't know why the Republicans are afraid of the truth. Every member should support allowing the American people to hear the facts for themselves. That is really what this vote is about. It's about the truth. And what is at stake? What is at stake in all of this is nothing less than our democracy.
Republicans loudly accuse Democrats of violating the president's right to due process in an overt effort to undo the outcome of the 2016 election. At issue, did the president withhold military aid from Ukraine until the leaders of that country agreed to investigate Trump political rival Joe Biden and his son? If he did, is that an impeachable transgression? Let's get going, Wayne.
Okay.
What do you say?
As we continue our march toward insanity and likely civil war, I will say, first of all, I don't care about Ukraine. Okay, I don't even care about Joe Biden's son. I think it's great when the vice president's kid makes all these millions of dollars just because his daddy is vice president. Look, this is such silliness. We had this Russian nonsense followed by this Ukraine nonsense. Look, at worst, this is Trump's political payback because he got so you-know-whatted after the 2016 election. Can we just actually do stuff in Congress other than this silly political stuff? There's an election in a year. Let's vote. Trump will win again, and then let's move on.
Okay, Tony, I guess you see this differently.
Very much differently. And I think here's the problem. I think your far-right Republicans really would ignore if Donald Trump shot somebody on Madison Avenue. Yes. So here's a good analogy. If the president did shoot somebody on Madison Avenue, we'd take him to court. There'd be a body, there'd be a smoking gun, and that's what you have here. There's a dead body, which is the Constitution, and there's a smoking gun, which is the president on tape saying that he's willing to bribe, blackmail, or bully anyone to stay in office and disregard law, order, and all due process. On top of it, it's really insulting for the president to think he's above the law. He doesn't have to follow the law, doesn't have to give his taxes. He can make money off the whole presidency. And in the meantime, he's going to turn working class families against each other, be they Democrats or Republicans. Working class white families, black families, Latino families are at each other's throats because we don't have enough money for insurance. And on top of it, these same families have to hire undocumented labor to subsidize their lifestyles, and then he's going to come around and bully the kids as well as the parents of the undocumented. It's sad. It's a sad day in America. I'm glad the Democrats are standing up, and I'm glad Pelosi is leading the way.
Michelle Maples, does that make any sense to you?
No. Well, what just happened, Tony?
It's
the opposite. It's like what you're saying directed at President Trump, you need to be saying to the Democrats, because that's exactly what the Democrats are doing. There has been no due process, which is what our country is founded on, ladies and gentlemen, in this process whatsoever. We have over 100 hours of closed-door secret testimony from all of these depositions. And finally, thank God, let's bring all of this out in the open so the American people can make the decision for themselves. Did you read the transcript, Tony? I read the transcript. There are no dead bodies. There is no quid pro quo. I don't know what you're reading, because we are reading something completely different.
It's terrible.
Hold on. Chris Churtico, is this the right political calculation for Nancy Pelosi?
Well, Nancy Pelosi, if you'll recall, for 2 years has said we're not going down this road until the evidence shows us we have to, and she delayed as long as she could. And when the president initiated this call on his own and initiated this shakedown of the Ukrainian prime minister on his own, she really had no choice at that point but to let the House begin this investigation. But I want to address some of these points if I can. The due process clause of the Fifth Amendment does not apply to an impeachment proceeding. The president is not entitled to any of the things the Republicans are griping about. And Bill Clinton got none of the things the House just gave President Trump. None of them. And so these depositions that they've been taking, the Republicans on the committee had every right to be in those depositions and ask questions. They chose not to go in. If they abdicated their responsibility, they can't gripe about it today.
Charles Blaine, can the president pivot and energize his base under fire from the Democratic House members? Do you think it helps him?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think the problem is Tony laid it out pretty nicely, is that the Democrats keep going for the gut whenever the president blinks wrong. I mean, he can't do anything right, and they always want to call for impeachment. On the flip side, I do think there's a problem with Republicans because they refuse to admit even when something is improper or that he should not have done something. It might not be impeachment worthy, but at least call it out for what it is and say maybe he shouldn't have done it, and there's a lot of reluctance to do that on the right. But I do think that this ends up firing up his base. I mean, Pelosi has slow-walked this for a very long time, and I think what's going to end up happening now is this is going to blow up in their face, and the base is going to be more energized in the end because they're looking at this as them trying to. The Republican base is looking at this as the Democrats trying to steal a presidential election back or whatever.
Bring it. Tell the base to bring it.
All
right. Well, they will.
Carmen Rowe, I always look to you for clear-eyed pragmatism. As you watch this unfold, are the Democrats screwing up, or are they compelled? Do they have to do this based upon what you've seen?
I don't know that anybody has to do anything, but we've talked here on this show about whether or not it's a crime. I think we all agree it's not, but whether or not it's impeachable, I mean, that, as Chris said articulately, that's a political process. It has nothing to do with our legal system. And so is it a political move? Is it political posturing for the Democrats? Absolutely. Will it blow up in their face? I mean, only time will tell because of the way that this has all been unfolding between secret meetings and now we want the truth and they're going to be public meetings. I think we have to see what actually comes out in these presentations that are about to come in these hearings.
Okay, Wayne, rebuttal.
All right, everyone thinks this is about Ukraine, but Tony has crystallized what it's really about: illegal immigration, right? You heard Tony said that during his whatever that was, right? He went to illegal immigration and how we treat Chicano families and black families and green families and purple polka dotted families. Look, that's what it's about. It's about policies. They don't like the guy. We all get it, right? Go vote. And then if the guy you don't like wins again, which he will, then you'll have 4 more years to come up with Slovenia as the next place there was some big scandal. Give me a break.
It's about abuse of power like you're abusing the mic. Makes no sense.
Hold on here. You know, and if it really is about getting out the vote, I mean, we have the city election. We're going to hear now that the Latino vote was 15% of the early vote. Will this be enough to get Latino voters across this country to the polls in numbers they haven't been?
Hasn't historically.
We're not used to.
Well, let's get something straight. Those polls don't get to our community. So let's get something straight. Not only are we undocumented when it comes to immigration, we're undocumented when it comes to polls. So our community's everywhere now, too. It's not like the old days where you could nail us down to one neighborhood. We are all over the place. So that 15% is actually a larger number. And this election is going to be very, very different. Yes, not only is the Latino vote going to show up for the president, it's going to show up for the mayor, too.
Okay, we're going to leave it right there. I'm sure.